Starlight Elena was not a good unit in FFBE, but I have much higher hopes for her in War of the Visions. So let's take a look at her kit together and determine whether or not it's worth pulling for this limited time 100 cost unit. Starlight Elena is our latest 100 cost fest unit. This means that she's here for a limited time only, similar to Dwayne and Zazan and Fravia. However, she will return periodically just as those units have. She is a light unit with the new Job Azure Pathfinder, and she uses swords as her main weapon, and her main offensive stat is going to be magic. Elena's TMR is pretty interesting. It has great stats, some high HP, some defense, some spirit, and a nice evade stat as well. It doesn't have any agility, but she's not really desperate for extra agility, not that it would hurt to have it, but her TMR ability is really where this shines. So it's a team buff that's going to give 20% light and dark resist for herself and her allies, but then it's also going to grant her a 25% attack buff. So the fact that it has 2 casts is also pretty neat. Now it's a shame that it's in cloth armor. It's going to clash with some evasion equipment like Sage Hat, and veterans are just going to be using their +5 ribbon, so it's not a big deal, but that's not accessible to a lot of players, so that is a pretty big clash. I think that you're going to want to stack as much evasion as possible, just because there's some units out there that have some pretty high accuracy stats. So equipping this means that Elena is also not going to be using something like bells or, you know, whatever other TMR that you're going to be using to power her up. So other units could be using her TMR, so maybe you get it on somebody else and they're using this team buff to protect you against other light units, or maybe the dark compositions that we see, but it's a good TMR overall. And then her master ability is pretty straightforward. It's your classic light team buff and also some magic and agility for Elena. Elena's stats look pretty good. Her HP is on the lower side for a DPS unit, but that makes sense considering her evasion capabilities. So similar to Rune Knights and Red Mages, she's going to have the start of the battle with 50% of her max AP. So that means that she's going to be able to fire off her attacks right away, but it also means that she'll run out more quickly than your typical mage would. She also has one of the highest magic stats in the game and several ways to raise it even further, meaning she can do some serious damage, and that's not even taking into account all the slash resist penetration that she has. She is limited to slash and magic attack types though, so those are, you know, some of the easiest or most common resistances that we see built, so good thing she does have that penetration. She can also be built for evasion, I mentioned that already, but it's because she has these super high agility and luck stats, as well as some passive and active abilities that will help her out as well. So overall, her stats look really good for an attacking unit. If you're wondering if you could just leave Elena at level 115, you are going to miss out on 388 HP and 34 magic. And that might not seem too bad, but her job level 25 skill is a guts buff and you won't want to miss it. Elena has 10% to pierce, projectile, and magic resistance, and these are all good starting points, but she's not particularly strong against resisting one type of damage. She has 0% slash resist, which is troubling, and then also a -5 to strike resist, which honestly, I mean, yes, that's a weakness, but almost everybody's weak to strike damage anyway, so whatever. She's also resistant to sleep and paralysis by 50%, and then has a 10% confusion resist. I always hope to see disable, slow, stop, charm, or stun resist on a unit, so it's too bad that we couldn't have seen any of those here. We're going to move along to Elena's kit, and I'll just gloss over the things that I think are important, starting with the passives. And to be honest, Elena has a lot of very good passives. Astrea's Chosen is an auto select because it gives agility, evasion, and slash resist penetration, so we're just always going to be equipping that. Otherwise, you have a few other options to customize her depending on what you want to do. So I recommend Magic Up level 1 as a solid choice, as it's just going to raise the damage of your abilities, but you're not adding any weaknesses or anything to your kit. However, you could also go with like Dark Spirit Blessing if the Spirit and the Dark Resist are going to make a difference in her surviving. As an evade unit though, I assume she's going to die pretty quick to 100% hit attacks, so you know how viable it is to build her defensively, it remains to be seen. However, because she's a unit with guts, being able to survive one attack is so important, because if you don't die in one hit, that's still 2 more times you have to be killed before you're actually dead for good. So that's where you have to kind of figure out, based on your equipment, your Esper, all that kind of stuff, how is she doing against enemy damage, and if you can get that second hit to kill her so that she has that extra survivability, then I mean, that's worth it. If we take a look at her counters, there's 2 that you're going to be wanting to use. Anti-Evil is really good if you're going for evade, and then otherwise Steal the Ephemeral Form is going to give you a chance to reduce some damage and survive an attack. And again, just like I said before, it's really important with the Guts buff that you are trying to survive 2 hits, and then that's a lot of, possibly some extra turns for Elena to just womp on some bad guys. Let's check out her main kit and see what's going on here. Lux Overflow, that's a small damage attack. It's going to give her a 25% light attack buff, but the range kind of sucks, so I don't know if she's going to use this over her other attacks unless she's low on AP or doesn't need to do that much damage. Evildoer's Beware is going to be an important buff for Elena, regardless if you go evasion or not, because you definitely want her to have that AP consumption down. Crystal Shine Bright has an awesome range for a large damage attack, and it also negates counter chance. And it gets even better because it gives her a very big agility boost. So with this range, she's sure to be using this early in a fight, which will, get her speed up, and then she'll do even more, take even more turns, hopefully. So really, really powerful attack. We also have Stella Maris, which is a great TP buff for your whole team. We want to hope that it doesn't mess up her pathing too much, because that AoE protection is going to be really good against a ton of different units that are in the meta. But you also have to think about which TP skill she's going to use. Is it, this one, her TMR, her Guts, and then we already talked about another one that's 4 different TP skills already. So definitely some decision making to be done here. We also have Gemini Blade, which gets upgraded to Iridescent Blade, and that's a 4-hit attack, so yippee. And then we also have I've Tempered My Resolve. It gives you that Guts buff, lets you survive fatal damage 1 time, and that's so powerful on an evasion unit if Zazan is any indicator. So even if you don't go evade, if you try to build Elena to survive 1 hit and it takes 3 hits to kill her, then that's still pretty good too. She can do a lot of damage in those extra turns that you're buying her, so fully worth going to job level 25 for this. Elena's sub job only has 2 skills. It's going to give her an AoE Immobilize and a nice human killer attack with a bit of AoE as well. And this is actually Elena's only AoE on the kit aside from her LB. So that right there might be the reason to actually run this sub job. Otherwise, you're just going to be sticking to mostly single target attacks. The Immobilize could also be pretty good. I mean, I kind of experimented with something similar with Dario's EX taunting spell, and it wasn't, as powerful as I hoped it would be. So we also have the Kododama wielder, and really there's one reason to use this, which is nimble movement. That's my biggest thing here, is that she's a bit of a glass cannon, so to be able to get around a map quickly and kill people quickly, the mobility boost here for a +1 move and jump is really good. You do get unevadable pain for the 100% hit, and you also get anti-magic wall, which is kind of unexpected because not a lot of Kododama wielders get that on their sub job, and that could be a really big factor in keeping Elena alive to milk that Guts buff as much as you can. So overall though, you want Elena to be using 1, like her slash attacks, and 2, their instant cast compared to the Kododama skills. So honestly, you probably won't be using this sub because again, you get weapon bonuses for all your slash skills. She has so much slash resist penetration. There's just really not a huge reason besides nimble movement and anti-magic wall to be using Kododama. And then we have Rune Knight, which, again, I always wish that they gave the hazard slash on the sub job for Rune Knight, but I guess that would just be a stronger version of her LB without the bonuses that we're going to see on it. So maybe that's why it's the same range, same, AoE and stuff, just higher potency. But you do get Drain Evocation. That's going to set up some really crazy damage turns. It's going to have a huge range for you too. And after a Guts, she could heal up with it, but it's still unlikely that she's like surviving, more than 1 hit a lot of the time. So it's also unlikely that if someone just killed her that she'll use Drain Evocation. So don't count on it for the healing, but do count on it for the setup turns. We also have Hazard Spell, which is another huge magic buff, and that might actually see some manual play, although I just think there's enough other skills on auto that you won't have her using this. And then Banish Gut Blade is really good against any dark opponent. It's just really going to whack them with that Dark Killer, and you know that could be pretty good. Elena's LB is very strong. The counter chance reduction is huge, but the 20% agility reduction can make a big difference, especially if your team is fast. You know, if you're running Engelbert, then you know he's still going to be lapped by everybody, but a lot of our other light units are quite quick, so this will be really good if you're running that kind of party. So 3 hits is also going to give you some chaining potential. Just watch out for that AP cost. Make sure she has bells, or maybe her AP consumption reduction is active or whatever, so that this does not drain you entirely. Real quick, let's mention the VC Smite the Dark. The stats are good. She loves the extra AP. The bestowed effect is very, very strong, specifically for Elena, but also Jaden would also want that magic bonus and, you know, evade is whatever, so it could be useful for him as well. The Elena bestowed ability is really nice. It's not totally crazy though. It's not something like, I think that Zazan's card, his ability is really crazy for him, so but it's not as big a deal here. So the party ability has Luck, which is great for evasion, and this card's going to be way better in a light party than Secrets of the Heart would be, but if you're running a multicolor evade party, then you're just going to be using Secrets of the Heart anyway, so it's something to consider there. The strike resist isn't irrelevant, but it's also not the reason you're pulling for this card, so that's fine. And then at the end of the day, I think that this card, it's not vital for her, but I think it really does help with evasion builds. I think it is a good card for her. It's a card that you're going to put on her a lot of the time, so if you have the Vizier for it, then you should go for it. But I also like, for example, there are Dwayne builds without his card. Like, it's going to be that type of card that, you know, it's not an absolute deal breaker not to have it. Normally I do a comparison to other similar units, but I just don't really think she has too much of a direct comparison. I mean, compared to other Magic DPS, she's got tons of magic, more magic than anybody else. She has more agility. She's got this evasion stuff. Her damage is going to be top tier, but she has less survivability, and she has, you know, less AP than all the other magic damage dealers. But they're just different types of units. She's gonna be able to deal more damage or the same amount of damage as you know, some of these big magic damage dealers like Helena, sorry. So I'm not going to put up, you know, comparison slides on this one. Okay, let's talk some pros and cons. Starting with the pros, huge magic stat, huge amount of slash resist penetration available. It means big damage all the time. So high agility, high luck, passives, active abilities that all help with evasion. It's an easy unit to build evade for, and light evasion comps have decent support. Fina can reduce accuracy with her new attack, and then you also have units like Rob that can use whatever the samurai skill is that gives evasion. I've never used it, okay? I'm sorry. But then otherwise, she has guts buff. She has that survivability against 100% hit attacks. She's a great trainer. And this is kind of a bad, like, it's one of those good problems to have where you have so many good TP skills that you don't know which one to use. It's like, that's better than having no good TP skills. So it's kind of a pro and a con. It's going to be hard to maximize her AI for like every single encounter. You're going to have to pick and choose what you're trying to do with her in terms of the different TP skills that she is using, especially when you start to factor in TMR skills. If we move over to the cons, you know, her full kit is limited to range height 1, and I've seen that used as a con before, and it is to a certain extent, but you know what, other units are limited to range height 1. I think Summer Kilfay is as well, and I've never felt like, oh, she could have, you know, she could have hit someone if she had an extra range. That's not been a problem for me, so that's okay. But some other issues, after her LB, she needs her own sub job for AoE attacks. She's going to be a mostly single target damage dealer, so just keep that in mind. She doesn't want Kodama sub, but she does want the +1 move and jump. She wants that mobility. It's kind of a tricky thing to figure out with that. And then dark teams have high accuracy, and there's just lots of 100% hits in general. I wonder, you know, how is she going to do against a lightning sharpshoot team, or you know, just the dark teams that have that accuracy up from the Helena card. So, and then her VC isn't a must get, but it really helps her. I don't actually I think this was a placeholder in my script. I don't know if this is supposed to be a con, so but it is something I'll mention now just because that's important to think about. Okay, so first video in a while, and you're all waiting for this. You want to know, should you pull for Elena? Well, don't pull unless you intend to pity, because she is limited and you're setting yourself up for some heartbreak if you don't get her. So don't worry though, her pity is generous. You can get her after 20 pulls, and opposed to buying her with medals like the typical pity that you'd have to do, you actually just get her on that 20th pull, and that means you have the medals to buy shards with. So that's pretty good. That's a nice little upgrade to the pity system. If you don't have light support or evade support on your account, then you could probably skip her. However, she doesn't have to be on a light team, and she doesn't need to be on an evade team necessarily, because her damage is so good. So if you figure out how to make her survive, if you find out how to make her evade, and be capable, then she doesn't need to be in these specific compositions, because her damage is just so good on its own. Now these fest units have generally been very good, and it's also been easiest to get them the first time they come around. So if you're really on the fence, you just have to take that into consideration, that will you regret later on if she's much harder to pull or build on her second appearance. So think carefully about whether or not you want to pull for her now. And to give you an idea, if I think she's good, I would pull for her if I had enough to pity. I don't have enough, so I'm not going to pull for her, but I totally would if I could. She's pretty awesome. Instead, I'll just save for Jaden and get him for my light team. Okay, so that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Otherwise, you can comment down below. You can join us on the Mysidia Gaming Discord, which, despite my brief absence from YouTube, is still bumping, so thank you so much to everybody on there for keeping that going. I'm still pretty busy with work, but I'm definitely, climbing this hill of work and getting to a place where I'm going to have more time for videos. So don't worry, I'm not going to be gone. Again, I am going to be filming more videos, so look forward to that. Otherwise, I'll catch you all in the next one. I'll catch you all on the Discord, and maybe even a live stream soon. Who knows? Until next time.